Hi, I'm Mayor Matt Larson, and thanks for taking time to watch this video about the hotel development on Snoqualmie Ridge. If you have not done so already, I strongly encourage you to go back and watch the two videos I did, part 1 and part 2, on growth and economic development in Snoqualmie, because it'll give you a lot of deeper background and context for why this hotel even occurred, or why the council even entertained and approved the hotel in the first place. And I do want to emphasize that the council did approve the hotel. It's ready to move forward. In fact, it's very likely by the time you see this video that the groundbreaking has already occurred, or construction is happening on the site. So here's the site plan of the hotel, and what's very unique about this particular site is that you can see the pink shaded area is the Lake Tradition power line corridor that cuts right through the property. The property, you can see, is the red dashed line that surrounds the subject property. It's one of the last lots left on Snoqualmie Ridge that we could develop such a thing, or for retail purposes. And now that Safeway and Bartell's and Chase Bank is in, you can also see that one of the restrictions on this is the blue line along the that goes parallel to the parkway, and that blue line represents the 50-foot setback from the parkway. And again, a lot of folks have raised the concerns that somehow the city violated the 50-foot setback. And if you go back and watch part 2, you'll see a little more history there with it. And in fact, that wasn't the case. We, back in 2007, added an additional allowance of uses that included retail in the business park. The developer wouldn't remove the commercial warehouse uses, so we retained the buffer as an incentive and as a leverage point to make sure that we could incentivize retail uses for the city. And so it was perfectly appropriate for retail uses to come in. In fact, that's what we hoped would happen. I would characterize this project in general as one where it's in this business of city governance, often a saying is, don't sacrifice the good to the perfect. In every project that we've done, whether it was the community center, the retail center, it's always been a complex series of compromises and negotiations to get to an end result. And often the perfect thing that we had in mind, we didn't quite get there. And I could tell you many stories if there were time. But if you tried to always grab onto and pursue the perfect, usually nothing gets done. And so I know that some people aren't happy with elements of that, and I'll go into that in a moment. But I think that's important to keep in mind. Here's some of the renderings, if you haven't seen these, of the hotel. This is sort of if you were high up over the library looking back down the parkway toward it. It involves two structures or buildings on this site. One is one on the uphill side of the site is a cafe and restaurant with office space up above, and then lower down the hill is the hotel. It's effectively a 4-story hotel that opens to a 5th story or a daylight basement on the downhill side. And we worked extensively with them to assure that it wasn't a stucco Hampton box, but it was more beautifully designed, had a lot of modulation and high quality design that was in keeping with the aesthetics and the values of the community. Here you see a cutaway showing kind of the setback off of the asphalt parkway along the pathway along the parkway. Some folks have characterized that somehow the hotel is sitting right off the edge of the parkway with a 60-foot building, and that's not the case. The architectural drawings effectively become the driving contract for the project. At the closest, the upper part of the building at 4 stories will be about 17.5 feet off of the edge of the asphalt parkway, whereas down on the downhill side, where it's 5 stories, it'll be up to as much as 25.5 feet away from the edge of the asphalt parkway. One of the other concerns was that the city compromised or allowed a higher building closer to the parkway or within the 50-foot buffer, and it's important to understand that the current design standards in the business park allow for 60-foot high buildings. The one limitation that the council allowed to be changed is the 60-foot height. It's 60 feet and 4-story. The one change that the council allowed was for a 5-story building at 60 feet high. The hotel proprietor could have just as well come back and built a 4-story hotel at 60 feet, and the highest point in this building is 57 feet right now. We also did a lot to try to mitigate any of the visual impacts by requiring the developer to actually replant all of the trees in the right-of-way on the bioswale side of the park, of the trail along Parkway, as well as landscaping on site over the next few years as that matures to mitigate the visual impact of the building. Here's just a cutaway or floor plan again that shows some of the distances there, and I'm sorry the numbers are too small for you to be able to read, but again it's 17.5 feet at the upper part and 25.5 in the lower. Here's a straight-on shot across the parkway of the building. You can see that it is a 4-story in the upper part and opens to a 5-story on the lower part of the parkway. And again, you see a lot of nice modulation. Other concerns that were raised were, one was the loss of the trees in the buffer. Again, if you watch part 1, you'll understand the trade-offs that we make when we create density and preserve thousands of acres of forest around Snoqualmie. In terms of losing views of Mount Si, currently right now the hotel would simply replace the trees. You can't see Mount Si and other valley views due to the trees, and the hotel replacing those trees is going to block the same view, so there's really no loss there. As far as the trees being lost, I think some folks feel that if the hotel wasn't built, somehow that buffer would be preserved, and that's simply not the case. Because of the extreme constrictions on that site, when you take into account the buffer and the Lake Tradition Corridor, there's very little that could be built there, and as a consequence, any developer would likely do retail and build into that buffer, in which case, whatever use came in the future, those trees would be coming down. Here's some other renderings showing the right in and right out access off of the parkway. There's been issues raised about impacts on Fairway, that people exiting the hotel heading toward the freeway would come out of this, go down Fairway Avenue and take a U-turn at Fairway Avenue to go back up the parkway. Our studies and analysis of this would show that would be highly unlikely. It's more likely that the customer would use the main entrance off of Center Boulevard. If they were heading south on back to I-90, they would go out the parkway and Center and turn left at the light, back up the parkway there. Again, here's a shot from the inside of the kind of the parking lot area, looking back at the hotel from the other side with the parkway beyond. Here's a view of the building looking up the parkway as you drive up the parkway, what it would be like. And then again, this is the building on the upper side, kitty corner from the Key Bank, with the cafe, restaurant, and offices above with the hotel beyond. And here's another shot of the interior space just off the parking lot of that same building. And again, both buildings looking across the parkway at that right in, right out entrance, with the hotel on the left and the restaurant on the right. And one of the nice things about this site, because of the constrictions in building with the power line, there's a tremendous amount of space up toward the center of the corner of Center and Parkway for a lot of public spaces that they wanted to design into the project for a public benefit, where little events could be held, or the public would be invited just to simply walk around and enjoy that connectivity to the again, this pedestrian-centered community. Nice little fire pit in the back off the entrance. There's another view of the fountain that would be located at the entrance of the Hampton Hotel, and so forth. So just as a summary real quick, some of the pros that we see, and again, I encourage you to watch the part 1 video. We anticipate that the Hampton Hotel could bring in alone to the city about $300,000 in revenue per year, which helps us get to fiscal sustainability and diversify our revenue sources to keep pressure off of property taxes. It's a significant anchor for the business park, since right now when you talk to many of the CEOs and the great businesses we have in our park, when they have business meetings, they're sending their clients down to Issaquah, and they would love to have that hotel here to keep that business in Snoqualmie. And of course, those businesses also then would go to our restaurants, and this serves as an anchor for our retail to not only have that business activity, but all the customers or the clients at the hotel would eat in the restaurants and be an anchor for the retail area. Also captures tourist dollars. I give one quick example is it's just been crazy that we host the Boeing Classic every year, and we have tens of thousands of visitors that come to Snoqualmie, and yet we watch tens of thousands of dollars leave town every night because we don't have enough offering of lodging hotels in Snoqualmie. So this provides us an opportunity to capture those dollars. And then just for residents, so numerous residents are excited about the prospect that if they're having a family wedding or a graduation, and there's a number of friends and family coming into town, that how fun would it be for them to have a hotel near, close by, where they can even walk or bike over from your house to stay there as a guest. In terms of the cons, some of the issues I've heard, again, is the mass and the scale of the building. And again, this is a very subjective thing that you can't argue with. Some people think it's a beautifully designed building, others don't like the mass and scale. This falls into the category, as I said before, as not sacrificing the good to the perfect. The council simply felt, and this is why it was a unanimous vote of the council in favor of this project, that the benefits far outweigh the disadvantages. And one other was the proximity to the parkway. In an ideal world, we would have liked to have pushed it back further, had it in more of a wooded setting, to mitigate that visual impact. But again, as we come to the full build out of Snoqualmie Ridge, our options for building such needed uses are more and more limited in the flexibility as we have less and less spaces, since this is literally the last lot on Snoqualmie Ridge that could effectively work with such a use as a hotel. With that, thank you so much for taking the time to watch.